Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we're discussing Game 74 of the regular season between the San Jose Sharks and the Dallas Stars, in which the Sharks have lost 2-1. So it is a regulation loss as opposed to the two previous overtime losses, and yet the losing streak still continues now with 9 games in a row, searching for that elusive 10-game losing streak as we move into tomorrow's game. And this was honestly not that bad of a game played from the San Jose Sharks, and it's kind of similar to the previous one against the Blackhawks and the one before that against the Nashville Predators. The Sharks just don't have the ability to actually close out these games. You definitely can't say that they were heavily outplayed by the Dallas Stars, but it's a situation where they only get a single goal, which of course has been a massive issue for the Sharks the entirety of this season. This one starts off in the first period, and it's a relatively even first, but it is the Dallas Stars with the only goal of that opening frame coming from Tyler Seguin to make it 1-0 Stars. In the second period, they would expand on that lead with a Michael Raffles short-handed goal. As usual, the Sharks giving up a short-handed opportunity and a short-handed goal to make it 2-0 Dallas. However, Timo Meier would get his 33rd of this season as he continues to almost single-handedly carry any semblance of a San Jose Sharks offense as he cuts the lead in half and puts it to a 2-1 game at the 40-minute mark. Sharks, they need to try and have a strong third period to end this one out, and it just doesn't really happen like it did in the previous game against the Blackhawks, where they did manage to do something and come back in that game. The Stars were just the better team, I would say, not by a wide margin, but still the better team in that third period, and especially once the Sharks got the goaltender pulled once again. San Jose, for whatever reason, when they're up or when they're trailing just a single goal and they pull the goaltender, nobody can connect the pass, nobody can handle the puck. We saw Ryan Merkley twice at the blue line fail to keep it in. He then goes off the ice. Brent Burns comes on, the more experienced, grizzled veteran player, and then he himself also couldn't handle the puck at the blue line, and the puck came out of the zone. And so the Sharks basically got one chance on net, I believe, in the 6-on-5 situation, and as such they'd end up losing it 2-1. And like I said, the 9-game losing streak is what it sits at now. Not a great look for the Sharks, obviously, but in terms of tanking and trying to get the highest possible pick, 9 straight losses are setting themselves up to have a potentially good spot. The Detroit Red Wings, though they did lose today, are only a single point behind the Sharks, and the Buffalo Sabres are only 2 points, for those of you who may be following that race. On to the players to talk about. We had a few injuries, so a few substitutions in the lineup. Barabanov did not end up playing here tonight, and so joining Meier and Hertl on the top line was actually Jonathan Dahlin. So after a few games of either being healthy scratched or playing about 7 minutes on a fourth line role, he was given an opportunity to succeed here tonight, and I thought he did a pretty good job at that. Obviously, you could very well argue that Meier and Hertl are carrying Dahlin's performance throughout this game. However, it should be noted that he definitely did have a bit more jump in his game. He set up a very nice early chance for the San Jose Sharks from Tomas Hertl, who ended up just sending the puck over the net. He made a decent play that would eventually lead to the Timo Meier goal. Even though he won't actually get an assist on that, he will get a plus, and he'll be able to know, in himself that he made a nice play. So generally, I thought it was a pretty good game for Dahlin, and so it was nice to see him be able to excel when he was put in a position to, if he hadn't played well, that would kind of be the end of Dahlin at this point for the rest of this season, but put in the position to succeed, he managed to do so. The problem, as it continues to be for the San Jose Sharks, this is not new information that I'm presenting here, but the other 3 lines for the Sharks are just at this point disastrous. Couture is flanked by Balcers, who is okay, but is more of a third line forward, and then Nick Bonino, who is just an offensive black hole for most of this season. This line did not play terribly. I mean, I can't say that they were bad. They had some decent defensive plays, and there were even a couple of opportunities. In particular, Nick Bonino had a chance where he just barely missed the puck, which could have potentially even been a tap-in type of goal. But in terms of sustained pressure or any sort of offensive forecheck, there was absolutely nothing from this line, and really nothing from any of the other lines for the Sharks besides the first one of Meier, Hertl, and Dahlin. And this is the biggest issue for the San Jose Sharks. We'll see if the signing of Bordelot can potentially, plug one small hole on the Titanic sinking ship that is the San Jose Sharks offensive game thus far this season. But that is, of course, rather unlikely. And so when we move on to the third line, it's, again, a similar situation. Gregor, Chmelevski, Nieto, this was not a bad line for the Sharks. And, Chmelevski was not hemmed in his own zone. He made a couple of decent plays. Gregor actually had, his usual little breakaway chance and a couple of other decent looks. But no sustained pressure, no sustained forecheck. There's nothing that's really threatening to the other team. You're mostly just making a play occasionally happen every other shift, or every few shifts, I should say, off the rush, and then you're kind of just meandering around a bit in the neutral zone until you go off for a change, and hopefully the first line comes on and the Sharks can actually get something done in the offensive zone. That's just really the problem here, and I'll sound like a broken record, but it's the same exact thing for the Sharks' fourth line here tonight. Weatherby was called up, and they actually did get a decent opportunity. The puck, I believe, was tipped by Weatherby right in front, and it just rolled wide of the net. But otherwise, there wasn't anything particularly special about this line. I honestly didn't even notice that Jeff Viel played this game, so there's that. And basically, like it is every single night, the first line for the Sharks led the way. The other three lines were, not really doing much. On the defensive side of things, another solid game for Jacob Magna paired with Brent Burns. Brent Burns, nice little rebound game for himself. He did not play too bad here tonight, and Magna has been rather impressed with. We'll see if he goes the same route as many other previous Brent Burns partners like Shemek and Joachim Ryan and Paul Martin, where after spending maybe a year or two with Brent Burns on his pairing, they just completely fall off a cliff. Paul Martin obviously did age out of the role a bit, so not necessarily his fault, but when it comes to, and Shemek did get injured, but of course Joachim Ryan definitely did fall off that cliff, and we'll see what happens with Magna in due time. On the second pairing, of course, Erik Karlsson did not end up playing this game. I found it a bit interesting that he was playing through injury when the Sharks were more or less out of the playoff spot, but not mathematically out of a playoff spot. But then since yesterday, since they were officially now out of the playoff spot, it is revealed that Karlsson has been playing through an injury and hasn't been 100%, and so he's sitting out now. I don't know why he didn't sit out earlier. The Sharks still had no chance then. Nothing really has changed besides the math behind it, but anyways, I digress. Talking about this actual pairing for the San Jose Sharks, Ferraro and Milosh, I must say, obviously, there was the pretty significant injury to Ferraro that kept him out multiple games, but Ferraro has probably been one of the more disappointing San Jose Sharks of this entire season. After that big step forward he took last year, where he was really looking to assert himself as a top pairing defenseman for the Sharks, his advanced stats weren't necessarily amazing, but he had enough good things in his game that it looked like this year he could really take that step forward and be that top pairing player for the Sharks, but he's taken honestly a step or two back, and he's just not necessarily making as many of those big defensive plays as we've seen from him last season. That has been a bit of a disappointment. Maybe he's lost a step due to that injury sustained earlier. We all know Ferraro is the type of player who, even if he isn't 100%, is going to come back into the lineup anyway, but at this particular situation, similar with Karlsson, if the Sharks are out of the playoffs, if Ferraro isn't 100%, he should be sitting, so I can only imagine if he actually is playing that he is perfectly fine, and so that does make it disappointing that he's just not really doing much of anything. On the third pairing, Merkley obviously comes back into the lineup because both Shemek and Karlsson were injured for this game, so you don't really have any other options, so Bob Booner's hand is forced to play Merkley, and I thought Merkley had a pretty okay game. Wasn't anything amazing, didn't make a ton of offensive chances happen. He had a couple of decent maneuvers, and then he did have the very nice pass to Timo Meier on the one Sharks goal, so there was that. There definitely was some upside, and it should be noted there wasn't any massive downside to his game on the other side. It was a very tame game for Merkley, I definitely could say. On the goaltending side, it was Kaapo Kähkönen getting the start, looking for his first win, not only with the San Jose Sharks, but I believe for the entirety of this season, I just found out, and the Sharks could not manage to do so. Kähkönen did not play poorly in this game, did not have a chance on the Sagan goal, didn't really have a chance on the Raffle goal either, only led in 2 goals on the shots that he faced, had a pretty decent save percentage, but But as per usual, the Sharks only give him the one goal of support here tonight. So once again, Kaapo Kähkönen continues the search for that elusive first win as a San Jose Shark. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action just tomorrow, where they will take on Kähkönen's former team, the Minnesota Wild. So the Sharks, I believe Reimer will probably get the start just due to the back-to-back situation, but the Sharks will be able to see former San Jose Shark Jacob Middleton on apparently the top pairing for the Wild with Jared Spurgeon. So that will be an interesting reunion. Class dismissed.